In retaliation to the forced closure of the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas, the United States consulate in the Chinese city of Chengdu officially closed on Monday morning, amid worsening relations between Beijing and Washington. The American flag over the building was lowered at dawn, according to Chinese state-run broadcaster CCTV, and onlookers were moved back by police surrounding the consulate as it prepared to shut. China ordered the closure in response to the U.S. closing the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas last week. Before Monday's deadline, staff were seen leaving the building, a plaque was removed, and a U.S. flag was lowered. China's foreign ministry said Chinese staff entered the building after the deadline and took over. Chengdu, the capital of China's southwest Sichuan province, was an important diplomatic outpost for the U.S., covering a large swath of the country, including the controversial Tibetan Autonomous Region. Last Wednesday the U.S. ordered the Chinese consulate in Houston to close, alleging that it had become a hub for spying and property theft. U.S. officials told reporters Friday that staff at the Chinese consulate were directly involved in communications with researchers and guided them on what information to collect. According to some news agencies, the idea to close the Houston consulate emerged this spring after China interfered when U.S. officials returned to the consulate in Wuhan to retrieve diplomatic materials. The Chinese Foreign Ministry called the closure of the Houston consulate an unprecedented escalation of ongoing tensions between the two countries. Tensions between the U.S. and China have been strained by the ongoing trade war, allegations over the coronavirus pandemic and U.S. criticism of human rights abuses in both Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and Tibet. Washington has also condemned the imposition by China of a controversial new security law in Hong Kong. Last week, a Singaporean man pleaded guilty in a U.S. court to working as an agent of China. Also last week, 4 Chinese nationals were charged in a separate case with U.S. visa fraud for allegedly lying about serving in China's military. Tensions between the United States and China are flaring over the coronavirus, which the Trump administration accuses China of failing to control, as well as accusations of espionage, intellectual property theft and human rights violations. Earlier in the week, the Trump administration added another 11 Chinese companies to a government list barring them from buying American technology and other products, citing human rights abuses against predominantly Muslim ethnic minorities in the Xinjiang region in China's far west. The two countries are also clashing over China's security crackdown in Hong Kong, its global 5G ambitions and its territorial claims in the South China Sea. China's continued military aggression along the Indian border and in other areas in the Indo-Pacific region poses a threat to regional and global security. The U.S. administration stand with their friends, partners, and allies like India against this continued Chinese military aggression. The U.S. House of Representatives has unanimously passed an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, slamming China's aggression against India and its growing territorial assertiveness in and around the South China Sea. However, trade, long the most contentious part of the U.S.-China relationship, has suddenly become an area of surprising stability.